Efficacy and long-term safety and dengue vaccine in ranges of endemic diseases. Definition. What is dengue? Dengue is a mosquito-borne viral infection causing a several flu-like illness and sometimes causing a potentially lethal complication called severe dengue. The incidence of dengue has increased 30-fold over the last 50 years.
Transmitted by mosquitoes, dengue fever is a threat to almost half of the world's population. Dengue is a major public health problem, particularly in Latin America and Asia, where outbreaks occur regularly. When biting a person for its blood meal, an infected mosquito releases saliva containing the dengue virus. Once in the body, the virus infects the immune cells in the skin tissue. And enters the lymphatic system. The viral infection can then trigger a strong inflammatory reaction. During the incubation period, the virus first replicates locally. And then spreads to the bloodstream of the infected person. This is called viremia. For some patients, especially children, the infection may cause severe forms of the disease, including dengue hemorrhagic fever. The blood vessels become permeable, resulting in plasma leakage. Ultimately, dengue hemorrhagic fever requires intensive hospital care. When a mosquito bites a person who's already infected, it draws in the dengue virus contained in the blood. By biting another person, it can transmit the virus and spread the disease.
Application in medicine. We are assessing in the incidence of hospitalization for virological confirmed dengue as a surrogate safety and endpoint during follow-up in 3 years to 6 of two phase trials, CGD-14 and CGD-15 and phase 2b trial.
With one more death of an infant due to dengue, the situation is grave in Delhi, NCR. Let's take a look at some of the symptoms and treatment of dengue. Dengue fever, also known as breakbone fever, is a mosquito-borne infection that causes a severe flu-like illness. There are 4 different viruses that can cause dengue fever, all of which spread by a certain type of mosquito. Dengue can vary from mild to severe, and more severe forms include dengue shock syndromes or DHF. Patients who develop the most serious forms of dengue fever usually need to be hospitalized. Unfortunately, there are currently no vaccines for dengue fever. The best way to prevent the disease is to avoid being bitten by mosquito altogether. Although there is no certain treatment for dengue, it can be treated as long as it is caught before developing into dengue shock syndrome or DHM. These are some of the symptoms of dengue.
Pros and cons. Dengue vaccine is a vaccine to prevent dengue fever in humans. The World Health Organization only recommends the vaccine as possible option in areas of the world where the disease is common. In 2017, the manufacturer recommended that the vaccine only be used in people who has previously had a dengue infection, as outcomes may be worse in those who have not been previously infected. Issue applied in Ecuador. Vaccine efficacy against hospitalization for dengue were more than 80% in individual trials among participants who were 9 years of age or older with a polio vaccine efficacy of 80.8% as compared with 56.1%.
So before we get into the immune response, we're going to need to understand a little bit about how dengue actually infects the cell. And if we can roll this video, what you'll see is how dengue can actually approach a particular cell. This is, as we saw very nicely from Joe's lectures, what the dengue virus virion looks like, and the lipid bilayer underneath the proteins, the capsid, and then within the capsid, the RNA genome of the virus. And so this virion is floating in your bloodstream and will approach a cell, often what we call a myeloid cell, which is a monocyte or a macrophage of dendritic cell of the immune lineage, and will actually attach to, this is called the cognate receptor, and we'll talk later about a different type of receptor called an FC receptor. And what will happen is that there'll be an interaction, and this will, through what we call receptor-mediated endocytosis, the virion will enter into this endosome, which is a membranous vesicle. And what will happen is that there are pumps that will pump in protons and will lower the pH. And you can see this by a gradient of pink. And as the pH is lowered, there's a movement of those envelope proteins, which actually will completely transform the conformation, which will allow it to actually fuse with the endosomal membrane, fuse it with the virion membrane, and then allow the capsid and then within that the RNA genome to be delivered into the cytoplasm of the cell. And that will then establish infection.
Conclusion. Although the unexplained higher incidence of hospitalization for dengue in years rate among children younger than 9 years of age needs to be carefully monitored during long-term follow-up. The risk among children 2 to 16 years of age was lower in the vaccine group than in the control group.
The dengue virus is a mosquito-borne virus that infects over 100 million people each year, and there is currently no vaccine available to prevent this infection.
The common name for the virus is called breakbone fever, and that's actually a really good description of how the virus makes you feel. Imagine all the things that happen to you when you get sick with a cold, for example. You begin to sneeze, you cough, sometimes your body temperature goes up, and these are all adaptations of the immune system to beat out a disease organism. So your body does the same thing. It basically goes through a fever to elevate body temperature and kill off the pathogen.
Although there is no cure for the dengue virus at this moment, scientists such as Shannon are researching the virus in order to gain a better understanding of the virus and how it infects humans.
The virus is an enveloped virus, and it's got a lipid bilayer that's coating the virus genome. It's kind of like a bubble or a droplet. And on the outer surface of that bubble are proteins, and those proteins are actually binding to host white blood cells. So the white blood cells are meant to bind to those, and they bind to the virus and they engulf the virus into what we call a phagocytic vesicle, where it's going to slowly digest the virus. But the virus has tricked out the human immune system in that instead of being digested in the phagosome, it actually activates the virus's proteins to open up a pore into the host cell, into the cytoplasm, and then the virus spills into the host cell.
The dengue virus is mostly found in tropical areas where mosquitoes thrive. It recently appeared in Florida in 2009. As scientists are racing to find a cure and to create a vaccine, there are precautions you can take when you travel to areas where the dengue virus is prominent.
I always tell people to look to their own environments and be responsible in terms of your encounters with mosquitoes, because the more you encounter mosquitoes, the more likely you are to encounter an infectious disease that's transmitted by them. So I always warn people to look around them and empty any potential water sources on their property or in their homes, in their gardens, where the mosquitoes might breed. I try to wear long sleeves and long pants to protect myself from mosquito bites.